They bring up such a good point that we think that debt is just related to money. Debt's related to sensory overload, relationship debt, health debt, flexibility debt. There's several things that can be equated to debt. And when we go into debt, there is an interest that is going to be paid. And we are not getting an interest coming back to us. It is costly.
Parable will help you see my point. High on a hilltop overlooking the beautiful Venice, the city of Venice, there lived an old man who was a genius. Legend had it he could answer any question anyone might ask him. Two of the local boys figured they could fool the old man, so they caught a small bird and headed for his residence. One of the boys held the little bird in his hand and asked the old man if the bird was dead or alive. Without hesitation, the old man said, "Son, if I say to you the bird is alive, you will close your hands and crush him to death. If I say the bird is dead, you will open your hands and he will fly away. You see, son, in your hands you hold the power of life and death. This I say to you without qualification and with no mental reservations whatsoever."
Welcome to the Cashflow Legendz podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
Good morning, everybody. Nate, how are you this morning, brother?
I am well. And a good productive weekend.
Good. Isn't it amazing how lots of things that we put off that we know we need to do, once we finally do them or we get started doing them, we realize, oh, that wasn't that bad, or
Like
our headspace
cleaning the
changes about it.
garage. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we focused on yesterday, was cleaning the garage. And I'm just like, how did all this happen? But yeah, starting to clear out some space and see a little bit more of the floor is nice.
Nate, one of the strategies that I didn't realize had been around for a long time until I've been in other groups and, being mentored and coaching things that we're in, is one of the best things that we can do is a brain dump, which is basically just pick a piece of paper, get a piece of paper and write down everything that's clogging up our brain to get it out. And it's kind of like closing down tabs on the computer, so your computer will run faster. Because those little things, every time you walk through the garage, Nate, deep down, and I had this happen in my garage storage also, so it's very relevant. Deep down, you're like, I need to clean that. That's bothering me. Oh, it aggravates me. I have to step over that. Oh, I don't need that anymore. I could throw that away. This is junk. Blah, 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 blah. And over time, that creates mental drag. And Nate, those are just not things that we're taught or we think about. But what's that Chinese proverb? It's not the mountain in front of us, but the pebble in our shoe. That pebble in our shoe will aggravate the fire out of us the longer we keep letting the pebble stay in the shoe. So just being aware of that is important.
Yeah, and some, I mean, this is a perfect lead in to what we had talked about. Sometimes people think that somehow miraculously the pebble is going to leave the shoe without them doing anything. Like some people spend their life waiting for their circumstances to change instead of changing their circumstances.
Yeah, Nate, that's a good segue. We're back in See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. If you don't know who Zig Ziglar is, cannot recommend enough pulling up some of his audio somewhere, finding him on YouTube, and just listening 5-10 minutes of him talk and the mindset behind why he talks about what he talks about. Now, Nate and I never shy away from Jesus as our Lord and Savior, how we're sinners in need of him all day, every day. And Zig shared the same faith that we have, so that resonates with us. But Nate, there's so much information out there today that I have found that you're better off picking something and focusing on it and pulling all of it out like a sponge into you for as long as possible before you try to do 37 things, listening to 37 different people. Don't ask me and Nate how we know that so well. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But the reality is that Zig's, one of his little sections in his book early on is "It's in your hands, son," as the title. And Nate just touched on it with this reality of your environment changes you, or you have the potential to change your environment. And Nate, isn't there something also about being a thermostat or a thermometer that's talked about
Yeah.
often that way too?
Yeah, so a thermometer basically just tells you what the temperature is, but a thermostat actually sets the temperature, sets the tone. So one is passive and one is active.
Yeah. So I couldn't articulate this years ago, but I have learned over time, Nate, in business and interacting with other people very successful in their walks of life that we are trying to learn from, folks around their faith, their family, their fitness, and their finances, is that normally they change the temperature in the room, and not in a boastful, bragocious way, but in a humble, value, let me help you type of way. And it's a very noticeable characteristic that I now look for in people is, do they bring value to the room, or are they just telling everybody like a thermostat what the problem with the room is? The temperature's too hot or it's too cold. When in reality, we all can get our butt off the seat and go change the thermostat, or do something different to change the tone. So there's this great parable, and it's in your hands. We've all probably heard of it before, and I'm going to use my own East Texas version of it because we don't have any mountains here. So think about somewhere where there's some mountains. They use Italy in the book, and these two young boys are going up this mountain to try to trick the supposed wisest, most what do they call it? A legend, basically in their area that always has the right answers. And they think, like most youthful bliss does, that they've got something that's going to stump him. And so, Nate, do you want to take over from there on kind of how they trudge up the hill and what they're trying to do with it, or you want me to lead in and then think through it from there?
Got it pulled up right here. It won't take but a second. I'll just read it real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Perhaps a parable will help you see my point. High on a hilltop overlooking the beautiful Venice, a city of Venice, there lived an old man who was a genius. Legend had it he could answer any question anyone might ask of him. Two of the local boys figured they could fool the old man, so they caught a small bird and headed for his residence. One of the boys held the little bird in his hand and asked the old man if the bird was dead or alive. Without hesitation, the old man said, "Son, if I say to you the bird is alive, you will close your hands and crush him to death. If I say the bird is dead, you will open your hands and he will fly away. You see, son, in your hands you hold the power of life and death. This I say to you without qualification and with no mental reservations whatsoever. In your hands you hold the seeds of failure or the potential for greatness. Your hands are capable, but they must be used, and for the right thing, to reap the rewards you are capable of attaining."
Yeah. There's a section earlier in the book, Nate, that you and I chatted through that kind of connects really well with this of how we put so many limiting beliefs on ourselves. And the way he gives that example is, you've never heard anybody say, oh, that lady down there had her first child and she birthed a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or a failure or a success driven person. It's always a boy or a girl.
Yeah.
But when we get to death, people die as a well-known lawyer, a pastor after the heart of God who just served people. So the point he's making is we have a lot of ability to control what we do with what's already in our hand. And Nate, I think one of the biggest misconceptions or maybe misunderstood things is one of the sayings you hear out there in the world is, it takes money to make money. And I'm not saying there aren't truths to that, but I'm also not saying that is a cut and dry truth, because money follows value. So just like that wise man knew that the value you create or the value you crush, that bird in this example, is based off of what you are doing with your hands, is no different than our day-to-day interactions, Nate, and how every day is a opportunity to allow that bird to flourish or to kill that bird, so to speak, in this example. So going into 2026, Nate, what are you what are you fully aware of, maybe even coming from 25 to 26, that is in your hands, that you fully control, that you are inviting accountability to, that you're open to, that you are leaning into because you've seen the benefit of being the thermostat instead of the thermometer and how you work towards that?
Um, I'd probably just say intentionality for us and the things that we are, working towards this year. I would say is probably the thing that I've really invited in the most when it comes to accountability. I've given you permission to call me up in where I have a gap in my schedule or something like that. Where in the past, if I had a gap in my schedule or somebody rescheduled on me or something like that, I'd be like, all right, sweet. I'm going to open up Netflix or something like that. Like just, take a little time off. But I think you and I are both really locked in this year and recognizing that the time that God has given us during the day, that we have made the decision that we are going to be actively letting our work be our worship. Um, you know, that's that's not anything that we should take lightly, because as we talked about, instead of there's a mindset shift that takes place the closer we get to the Lord, the more gratitude starts to kind of fill up inside of us, and we recognize that it's not letting our work be the worship, but that in everything we do is an act of worship, because we're stewarding everything that He has put in front of us.
Yeah, Nate, you remember the movie? I got this off of something I was listening to this morning because I've been studying the Sabbath and why it's really a gift from the Lord to get us to recognize that He's in charge and to acknowledge that it's not a restrictive thing. It's a refreshing, recharging awareness thing. And you remember the movie, I don't know, maybe the 90s, Mr. Holland's Opus?
Vaguely.
Vaguely. So I vaguely
Richard
remember the two.
Dreyfuss, I believe,
Yep,
was
yep,
the
Richard
main
Dreyfuss.
character. Yeah.
And at a high level, the whole premise of the movie is that Mr. Holland is going to create this masterpiece, but he's going to go teach for a little while these students while he works on this masterpiece, which is the thing he's focused on. And then at high level, and I think I may rewatch it because I really like the story behind it and what it's saying. High level, he keeps reworking the masterpiece, and at the very end, he's still working the same place as the teacher, and he's getting shuffled out, so to speak, into retirement because he's done it for 40 plus years. And then as he's walking out of the building, he hears a sound in the auditorium that he recognizes, and he goes into the auditorium, and it's all the students and all the staff and all the teachers and all the parents that he's impacted living daily. And the beauty of it is that his former musicians that he trained and taught and poured into, they've taken his masterpiece, Mr. Holland's Opus, and they are now playing it for him.
Mm.
And in that moment, and that's what prompted me to text you this morning, Nate, about understanding that interruptions are a part of the work. They are not something we're trying to avoid so we can work.
All right. So since you use the word masterpiece, shameless plug here. I'm going to post this in the comments.
Okay.
This is a new ebook that we put out not long ago, and the framework for this ebook, it's like 10 or 15-minute read, so it's pretty. This isn't going to take you take you much time. What in the world?
I see
Oh,
it.
you just posted it. Okay. Wait, did you post that or not post it?
You did.
Okay. All right. One of us posted it.
Wasn't me.
Anyways, um, yeah, it was weird. I got distracted by that. So, yeah. So I put in the comments the three MPs are the three money problems that we all face, and what we have discovered in the last 8 years since we've been doing this is that if we can focus on solving those three money problems, we can turn those money problems into a masterpiece.
Yeah. Now, the thing that you're saying, is kind of an evolution in our thinking, um, or the Lord humbling us to realize that it's all for Him, all of it. It's all His. It's all a gift from Him. Is this reality that value created on a bigger stage, if you're afforded that opportunity, almost always comes from value created on no stages, because you believe in what you're doing, it's what you're called to do, it brings value to people, and it's about helping others. So the big transition in Mr. Holland's opus is like, at first he's like, this is just a stepping stone because I got to make some money while I'm working on what my masterpiece is. And Nate, we were talking about this morning. Nate and I have a Monday morning meetup where we have more of a fellowship and studying and scripture and just checking in. It's accountability for the week, where we were reminded that we get too caught up in trying to overplan and not focused enough in being present in what we've already got to do. And if an interruption happens, that's okay. It's a great way for me, if an interruption happens, Nate, it's a great way for me to practice the fruits of the Spirit that I know are already indwelling in me. So, Nate, one of the things that you said this morning that we often say, and you'll be surprised, everybody listening, words matter. I got called out by our business buddy on Cashflow Legendz, Brock, about my words and what I was saying to myself. And so I'm going to challenge you. Words matter. And Nate said, I have to, about something related to the kiddos. And he wasn't being ugly or frustrated, but he caught himself and he goes, no, I got to. I get to.
I get to.
And that's such a minute shift in thinking. But I just want you to play with that today. Have to versus I get to.
Yeah, you read enough and hear enough people talk about this. The ability to reframe can create such power in your life. I use this example often. I may have even talked about it last week. I say it so many times I don't know who I say it to. But when you get to do something, or you say I have the privilege of doing something, you force yourself into defining why it's a privilege, which pushes you into gratitude. And as we talked about before, you can't be frustrated and also in gratitude at the same time. Like, you can't be in comparison and be in gratitude at the same time. So which one do you want to live in? Because if we survey the room, everybody says, I want to be happy, I want to win. Okay. So if you're in comparison, you're not happy and you're not winning.
Yeah. Nate, we're going through a process right now that I've done several times, and I was reminded of it again over the past weekend, about studying where we're allotting in 15-minute sections our day. Now, a lot of people think, oh, well, Nate and Brandon, you're entrepreneurs. That's way different than when I go to work. No, it's not. Because there is something on our schedule to do or not to do, and we are allotting time or energy. And if we don't track it, we're often doing something different than we think we are doing. So the point being is, often I may have been in a position where I was working somewhere, and on my calendar it may have said this, but in my mind or in my heart or even scrolling on Facebook, I was doing something different. And I'm not saying any of those are right or wrong, but like you said, Nate, awareness is so important. And Nate, the challenge was Saturday, as I was going through some training, do something that will give me 10 hours back during a week to focus clearly on where I know I'm wanting to go and why. So I had to get clear on where am I going. That was first. Then I had to understand why I wanted to go there and connect those dots. This is just for me as a business owner with you as a business partner. Okay. You know, it only took me 30 seconds to make that change. Not because I'm magical or because I've got it all figured out, but because we've done this so many times. You know what I did?
What?
I went right to my phone and I removed Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Gmail. All my social media connections, not because they're not important, not because we can't use them for value, but because I had studied the data enough, being around people who call us up, to know that it is a time warp that takes away from what I say I want to accomplish with the gifts God's given me. Boom, just like that, 10 hours. So my challenge to everybody listening is go to your screen time. Go look at your screen time amounts. That will give you a clear indicator real quick on where your mind goes. And Nate, talk a little bit about how you're not just losing out on that moment when you jump on an app when you're trying to focus on something else.
Well, there's two things that come to mind. One, Kevin said, I'm scared to look at my screen time.
Me and you both, brother.
So there's two things. One is the opportunity cost of when you're doing this, you can't do something else. But also when you think that jumping in and out of notifications and text messages and all that stuff is really just a 30-minute distraction, it's not, because your focus breaks and it actually takes much longer to recover, to regain your focus when you're going in and out of different apps and all this other stuff. Brock actually posted on LinkedIn one of his hacks for his phone that he's started enjoying was essentially going to grayscale on his phone, because if you know anything about blue light and colors and all that stuff, we're drawn to vivid colors. That's why our screens become more and more vivid over time, is because we're drawn to them. It's the devices are created for us to be on them a lot.
We are the product.
So if you go to grayscale on your phone, all of a sudden there's a switch that happens, and your phone is no longer the appealing, colorful, attractive thing that it once was. Now it's just a tool.
Nate, that reminds me of some of that accountability family training stuff that we're going through. And I cannot recommend enough their work. It's Fig and Eagle. It's our buddy Jimmy J's and Scott Donnell, who you know, Nate, and you've spoke at events with, or not with, but at the same time. And they bring up such a good point that we think that debt is just related to money. Debt's related to sensory overload, relationship debt, health debt, flexibility debt. There's several things that can be equated to debt. And when we go into debt, there is an interest that is going to be paid. And we are not getting an interest coming back to us. It is costing us. So like you said earlier, Nate, the starting back up of focus. I was talking to our good buddy, Sean Strew, my good buddy that we went to school with yesterday. And I said, I just now have begun to realize that when I escape to my phone, so my phone's right here. All right. I don't have any apps on it. But what I would do is I would open it up and I would go to a website. And even when I deleted the social media apps, I went to find another app that I could escape from focusing. I wasn't necessarily escaping from anything bad. Life is good. Praise the Lord. But I was just escaping from staying in a path where I was locked in for 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes. It's wild to me how many times I've done that.
Yeah. Well, so we've talked about this before, and then we need to kind of wrap up. But,
Yep.
you know, every one of us have an addiction of some type. And that craving, that addiction never goes away. You just have to figure out something positive to feed it.
Place it often.
You gotta replace it with something that's going to create value and not detract.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about this on the next one, Nate. It's a quote that stood out to me that I heard recently by Joe Polish from Scott Donnell. I want to be sure credit always goes to where we get it from. And Joe Polish said, overworking hustle culture is the most addictive, non-combative thing, I'm paraphrasing here, in our world today that is more addicting than many other things that we say we can be addicted to.
Yep. It's very socially acceptable.
Yep. And it's the opposite of creating value in your life, because last thing, there's a net negative proven statistically after 8 hours of work. You go to 9, 10, 11, 12, the return is minimal on the value that you bring. You go past 12, the return starts going the other way. And that's relevant in all those debts we talked about. So, Nate, anybody listening, watching, catching this later, listening live, we love the idea of bringing value to you on our life journey as well. Money will always intertwine, but as Nate and I always say, it ain't about the money. Money's just fueling clarity, or it's taking away from clarity. And so we want to share some of that side too for anybody out there who may think they have a beautiful bird in their hand and they're trying to figure out how to help it grow and take off. What did that look like for Nate and I? So we're always open to topic requests, thought processes, anything you want us to dive into, not because we figured anything out, but because we're always enjoying the process of what we can figure out to share with others. Hope you have a great day. We appreciate y'all joining. We are not ever taking lightly you sharing your greatest asset with us, which is your time. Till the next one.